Hey, everybody. It's time for another episode of Grant Draws. Tonight on the show, we have Benjamin Hunting. We're kind of doing a little bit of an experiment because I really don't know much of anything. In fact, we actually got set up by another creator, Jeffrey Haas. Is that how you pronounce his name?
I believe so.
Um, so I don't. Is he somebody that you hired um, to like set you up on shows?
He's taking care of a lot of the PR for this particular Kickstarter. In the past, I've done it all myself, and as you know, that can be a lot. This is my fifth or sixth campaign, and I actually got in touch with him late last year, and there are a bunch of delays on some projects I was working on, and we ended up working out on Model UN, which was a bit unexpected, but he's been really great. He's helpful, a lot of good ideas, and he works really hard. I have nothing but good things to say about him.
Cool. I might have to employ his services for my next
I
Kickstarter.
recommend it.
So let's see who we have in the chat. We have my friend Dan Hollifield. Dan, good to see you as always. Donna is here as usual. Good evening, Donna. Donna's saying hi to Dan. Dan is saying hi to Donna. And of course, Donna's husband. I believe you guys are married. Uh, if not, you guys are probably common law married at this point. Carl and Donna both saying hi. Joe Bachman. The fact that Joe is in the chat reminds me I do need to mention the Independent Creator Directory. I already put the link to it. The Independent Creator Directory is Joe Bachman's invention. And basically it is basically the Internet Movie Database, but of independent creators. So there's a lot of independent comic book creators, but also novelists, also illustrators, also independent novelists. If you hear meowing in the background, it's because my wife is feeding our cats in the same room that I'm doing this show. So right now, my cats, this is the happiest they get all day. So Joe is saying, I see the usual bunch of misfits are here, and Dan is saying, of course. Carl is agreeing. Donna is reminding everybody to like and share. That's why I love you, Donna, because you remember to do the stuff that I forget to. Check out the indiecd.org. And if you guys want to become a part of indiecd.org, talk to Joe Bachman. He's available on all the social medias. Donna saying hi to you and I.
Thank you, Donna.
And Marvin Wynn. Marvin Wynn is another really cool comic book creator. Just so you know, he also has a Kickstarter going on. He was on the show last week. He has a Kickstarter for his comic book, The Edge. He's trying to put out action figures for his comic book, which is pretty cool. So check out that. I don't have the link handy, but Marvin, if you want to send it to me, I'll put it in the chat. Carl says, if we're not married, we're in trouble. Joe is saying that indiecd.org is going through an overhaul. Well, that's good. I'm glad you're keeping up on it. And whoops, Joe is saying WordPress has decided to play dumb. And Donna's saying, hi, Marvin. Everybody's saying hi to each other. So while I get a sip of my tasty beverage, I'm going to link So this is my Kickstarter. And I mentioned earlier in the day that we're close to being up to the halfway point. And wouldn't you know, we made it over the halfway point. Because our goal was 2,000. And earlier today, we made it all the way to 1,000, which is awesome. We made about $200 in one day, which is really great. a lot of progress. I mean, I spent a lot of time marketing it, but it was a really good accomplishment. I'm going to play the trailer, and then after that, we can move on to talking to Benjamin's about his Kickstarter.
Greetings, ghouls and boils. I'm the Ghoul Master, a loving homage to horror anthology narrators of yesteryear. Wait, I'm an homage? Why didn't anybody tell me? You'll hear from my agent about this. But first, let's get to the heart of the matter. I'm here to tell you about the new horror anthology, Memoirs of the Morbid, on Kickstarter in time for Halloween. Memoirs of the Morbid is a black and white homage to classic horror comics from the 40s and 50s, containing 5 self-contained stories by some of the best indie comic creators out there. There's that word again. I better not find out homage is an insult. Anyways, Memoirs of the Morbid is completely done and ready to go to the printer. So don't make a grave mistake by missing it.
Yeah, so like I said, I think that does a pretty good job of explaining what the gist of the comic book is. It's a EC Comics homage. For those of you who don't know what EC Comics is, that's a horror publisher from the 40s and 50s. If any of you guys have heard of Creep Show or Tales from the Crypt, they're the guys who published that. And they had a pretty distinct style that obviously is influencing comic books still to this day. And this is kind of a little bit of a cheeky version of that. And it's 4 different stories, again, all in black, all self-contained. You don't have to have read any of the other volumes in order to enjoy it. Oh, you know what? I almost forgot to put the link to that. And after I do that, then we will discuss Benjamin comic book. In fact, I'll bring that up while I am trying to look up the link to Memoirs of the Morbid. Click share screen. Well, I mean, this is the pre-launch page, so honestly, there's not a lot on it. But did you want to explain what's going to be on this page? Like you said, a week from today, it's going to launch.
Yeah, it's launching on October 7th. If you wanted to show the PDF that I sent you, you could put that up too. That has the first 5 pages of the book, and that might be maybe a better visual representation of what's happening. But it's as it says in the quick explanation, when a group of aliens come to the planet Earth and mistake a model UN club at a high school for the actual United Nations, a group of misfit teens have to basically negotiate the future of the planet over the course of one crazy weekend when all they really want to do is graduate. And it's set in the 1990s at a small private school, and it's kind of like Freaks and Geeks meets sci-fi. That was my baseline that I was operating from for the story.
So that sounds like a really fun premise. I'm going to click notify me on launch.
Thank you. Putting those numbers up.
Well, I'm going to give my stock rant about clicking notify me on launch. It doesn't cost you a dime, and it doesn't obligate you to back the comic book when it is finally launched. All clicking notify on launch does is it helps the creators, because it helps you stand out a little bit in the algorithm.
It really does. It's honestly a big help.
And I put the link in the chat. I'm hoping that everybody will click on that. and I'm also going to. Up. I shouldn't have. I shouldn't have clicked out of that while I still had a beer can in my hand because
Now you got to blur it out.
yeah, because I'm giving away the fact that I'm drinking while I do my show. Here's the first. Okay, so we also have. He was kind enough to send me a PDF with some of the pages finished. So now, are you the artist and the writer, or just the writer?
No, I'm just the writer. My co-creator on this is I.E. Santiana Hernandez. He is an Argentinian comic book artist, and this is both of our first mangas, I think. So I'm super impressed with what he's been able to do and how he's been able to bring the characters to life while also implementing some pretty cool sci-fi interiors and exteriors and ships and that kind of thing. I think it's not an easy task to create very expressive characters and faces while also being able to handle like the machinery and the futuristic overtones that you often see in sci-fi. And that's one of the things that attracted me to his portfolio when I was looking for an artist to collaborate with on this project.
So now, if I'm looking at this correctly, it seems to me like it's very Japanese inspired. Would you agree with that?
So it's really hard for me to say because I have not read a lot of manga. I have read some. I'm not a super fan. The reason I chose this style was because I felt it fit the narrative really well. And in terms of IE, I'm not sure how much manga he has consumed. I sent him a couple of books that I generally like the style of, particularly a book called Skullface Bookseller Honda-san, which I really enjoyed. But this is what he came up with, and I this is my third book, and I've learned to trust the artist when it comes to visuals, and I was happy with the style. It really matched the energy on the page, and in a lot of instances, it elevated it. And he had a lot of really cool ideas to improve on concepts that I had been focusing on, clarifying stuff, adding a lot of, I guess, energy and and I can't say that word, dynamics to the page. You can see it here in some of these panels. I had these stats panels where I wanted to kind of, when you have a book, I'm trying to do this in about 100 to 120 pages. So you really don't have a ton of time to develop character outside of story. Like narrative really has to feed the character. So I use these video game style stats panels, like almost like what you would see if you were selecting a character when you were playing Tekken or Mortal Kombat or something.
This is what we're talking about here.
And it's like a mix of that video game style plus a yearbook page. But he added in, I had some ideas for, we can highlight the accessories and the fashion stuff that makes these kids unique because they're all wearing uniforms, right? So you have to find a way to make them distinctive visually, especially when two of your main characters are brunettes in a black and white medium. So he really went above and beyond when it came to bringing these stats panels to life.
Yeah, I'm really bad. One of the things that I'm really bad at is figuring out how to draw like likeness in characters, like being able to say, oh, okay, this character's nose is shaped different than that other character's, and then it's really hard.
It is. And there's nothing harder, I think, for an artist than giving them a crowd scene and expecting like 25 indistinct faces. So I tried to keep the number of, initially when I was writing the story, I had the idea that it would be more of a slice of life book where it would be 20 kids in a high school and Model UN would be their focal point, and that's how you would get into their lives. But I realized that I didn't want to do this long ongoing story. I wanted to tell something self-contained, and I felt it would be a lot easier to have people connect with the characters if there were fewer characters. So I cut down the number of characters, and then I added the sci-fi element because I also came to the realization that pretty much any high school style manga has already been done better by a Japanese master at some point in history. And there was no point in trying to compete with that. it was more interesting for me to do the sci-fi element to it, which I thought made Model UN unique from a manga perspective.
Yeah. So sorry, I'm trying not to do. There we go. I'm trying to have both of us on at the same time. Yeah. So it says here that it's over 50 pages.
Yeah, it's
Is
the first
that-
half.
Oh, okay. So it's gonna be 2 issues,
2 issues.
or maybe 2 volumes, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, that's the plan.
And so when is this going to be on Kickstarter?
It'll be on Kickstarter October 7th, which is 8 days or a week and a day from when we're recording this. I'm not sure. I know this is live, but does it goes up right away, right afterwards? So people who see it, yeah. So October 7th is the planned start date, starting at 8 a.m. Eastern, kicking it off bright and early.
So now, how close are you guys to being done?
It's complete. The entire book is complete and ready to go.
Oh, it's completely done. Wow. Okay.
I don't launch Kickstarters unless there's some extenuating circumstances without the project being complete. I think that I really owe it to our supporters to get it to them as quickly as possible. And I know that I always like. I mean, there's this Kickstarter that it's not even a Kickstarter. I believe it was done on BackerKit, where a comic book publisher was doing the Terminator comics. They're bringing them back in a compilations type version. And I got an email about it recently. And then I remembered that it was 2 years ago that I had supported it. And they're like, hey, maybe it'll be ready in December. And the book is like literally 18 months late. And it feels so crazy to me because they're a full-on publisher and the books were written in the 90s. You know, like the books were done 30 years ago, and I don't understand what's going on. So, long story short, I don't want to be like that.
These are reprints of comic books that were done in the 90s.
Yeah, because they're not really available anymore. So they put together a special edition of them, and I think a lot of them didn't make it to trade back then. So they're trying to get them out there, and I was excited about it, but like 18 months is a long time, long enough for me to have forgotten that I supported this fairly expensive project. So maybe I'm going to get Terminator for Christmas. I don't know. I mean, I guess we'll find out. But Model UN is definitely going to be shipping in November when the Kickstarter is done.
Yeah. So I definitely agree with you about having the comic book finished. Now, I kind of budget a little bit because sometimes I'm not 100% done with the lettering. Sometimes I'm waiting for a page or two.
Yeah.
But yeah, for the most part, I like to have the comic book. Now, I don't send it to the printer until the Kickstarter is done.
Yeah, but it depends. Like, so this book is not being printed, this issue.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, and the reason for that is I live in Canada, and 80% of my audience is in the US. And right now with the tariff situation, there's no way I can reliably send books across the border and know how much that's going to cost people. So rather than have my supporters end up with an unpredictable customs bill of some kind, I'm going to keep things digital until that situation has stabilized. I mean, right now it changes week to week. So it's really difficult to plan, especially as you know, with a print run. It's something you really plan out in advance. It's you don't send the files and get them the next day. You fit into a printer schedule and you get it at a specific point in the future. So it's the first time I've done something completely digital. So it's brand new for me and it's a little daunting because it's really changed how I approach the Kickstarter. The rewards have to be fairly different compared to what we've done in the past. You can't have things like original art. You can't do art prints. You can't do buttons, pins, little figurines, that kind of stuff. So it's a very simple Kickstarter. And I'm mostly focused on the book itself. I have a very in-depth behind the scenes tier where you get the script, you get the layout, but you also get layouts of pages that didn't make the final cut. Santiago Hernandez was really good about providing alternate takes when he had an idea about a page that maybe wasn't in the script. And so what I'm doing with the Kickstarter is offering the opportunity to see the discussion that happened and why certain pages were selected over others. Because sometimes you have two great pages, you just can't put them both in. And you have to make a decision as to which one moves forward. And it's a peek behind the curtain. And I think for people who are either curious about how these are made or maybe thinking of making comics themselves, it might be interesting for them to take a look at that.
Wow, that's a really interesting idea. Yeah, I've never heard anything quite like that before. Where did you get that idea from?
I just thought it would I thought it would be interesting. In the past, we've provided a tier with the script and the layout, but my previous collaborator Joe Ng, who worked with me on the last two books, he and we interfaced differently in terms of how we were deciding a page would move forward. So there wasn't much back and forth once the layouts were done. But with Israel, there was that kind of, or with IE, there was that back and forth, and it was done visually. So I have that documentation. I have that peek. In previous campaigns, Joe and I would do audio commentaries after the fact. So we would read the book together and spend a couple of hours discussing how the choices had been made. And because Santiago Hernandez and I didn't interact in that way, it was mostly over email and chatting. It's just a different way to do kind of a similar thing.
Whoa, Jesus. I almost got run over by... Did you see that?
I saw the camera move.
I almost got run over by a cat. She is calm all day long. And then at 9 p.m. at night, she feels the need to act like a lunatic. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, I was going to say, like, if you guys hear background noise, it's because I don't know what is going on with my cat, but she feels the need to run back and forth around the room.
I'm into it. I have a cat too, and he's a maniac. So,
well, you'll get along with our chat because pretty much everybody here loves cats.
They're the best.
I don't think I've ever made a comic book without a cat in it, at least, even if it's just in the background.
That's a good policy.
It's kind of a good luck charm. I'm going to go through the comments a little bit. Donna says, we're a friendly and welcoming bunch of nuts. Carl says, sorry, I had a cat crawling all over me. Yeah, like I said, everybody here loves cats. Carl says, good to see you got more people on the memoirs, Grant. Yeah, I think it's doing really well. I'm not going to lie. I have been nervous just because I do feel like, I mean, you mentioned you mentioned tariffs and stuff. I think everybody's just a little bit nervous ordering comic books nowadays. I don't know. I put the link to Memoirs of the Morbid in there. If you guys haven't checked it out yet, please check it out. And then I also put the link to the other comic book, Benjamin's comic book, Model UN. And Carl is complimenting your art.
Well, thank you. Santiago Hernandez makes me look good.
Carl says, wow, waiting nearly 2 years is excessive.
If you go to the page now, it's just people asking for refunds. It's kind of sad. I mean, I honestly hope I get the book.
Donna's saying, I don't mind waiting a few months, but anything over a year isn't responsible.
I feel like you should let people know, right? Like if your book isn't complete, and there are extenuating circumstances, and there have been delays on my side in the past too, you just got to keep people in the loop or let them know from the beginning. 2 years, not really saying anything, it's not a great policy.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely had delays, which I'm not going to lie to you is by delays I mainly mean me being lazy, but just too lazy to go and box up the comic books and mail them out. But I mean, I'm talking a couple weeks. I'm not talking years. So Carl says that you're into Trek, so he's okay in my book anyway. So are you a big sci-fi fan?
Yeah. Got the Riker in the background.
I see that you have Riker and Donna.
And it's I believe they're in shore leave garb. Shore leave Riker is the best Riker, I think.
Yeah, Riker always was a bit of a pervert, right?
Totally.
But I think the ladies loved him.
I mean, how could you not? That beard, that grin. I mean, look at it. It's working its magic over the decades later.
So is Next Generation your favorite, or do you have?
I'd say the original series movies were like really what drew me in when I was a kid.
Yeah, so I'm an original series guy, mainly because I like the characters
Yeah.
from the original series. That combination, especially the chemistry between Spock and McCoy, is one of my favorite things.
I feel like that pairing of characters was a model for friendship for me when I was a kid. And like I was super intense as a child, I guess. And I was like, oh wow, these guys are really down for each other no matter what happens, stealing ships and bringing each other back to life and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, that's what friends do. And then you get out in the world and you're horribly disappointed that that's like, things aren't nearly that dramatic. But it was a pretty cool model when you're younger. And up here in Canada, when I was very young, CBC, the national broadcaster, would broadcast the original series pretty much every day. It was like syndicated, so like 4 or 5 p.m. I'd come home from school and it would be on, and my mom was into it too, so we would watch together. It was a lot of fun.
So it was a bonding moment.
Yeah, we ended up, when I was old enough, we would go to the movies together when they would premiere and whatnot. So that was fun to do with my mom too. I think the first one I remember seeing was probably Final Frontier, which is a terrible movie, but like when I was 9 years old, I was into it, you know, like.
So which one was that? That's the fourth one?
No, that's the fifth one that Shatner directed, where they fight God.
Yes, I do remember that one. I remember as a kid, I really liked the thing that the little miniature thing that created the marshmallows.
Oh yeah. Missed marketing opportunity there. Like, why didn't they have those in the hands of every child? Like,
oh, I totally had one.
You had one? I didn't know they existed.
You had to get like 4 or 5 like proof of purchases from Jiffy Puff marshmallows or something.
That's awesome.
You sent in, and it was such a pain in the ass to use. First of all, it had to be gigantic in order to fit the marshmallows.
Yeah.
And then it took forever to stuff the marshmallows in there, and you could only fit like 3.
It's so like a magazine of marshmallows, basically.
Yeah. So you would go like on your hike and like or your adventure or whatever, and you're like, oh, I'm hungry now. I want some marshmallows, which is like the worst thing to eat. Well,
time for my 3 marshmallows.
Yeah. So you're like, and of course this thing was like giant on. Hey, sorry, am I talking too loud? So you would be walking like with this giant marshmallow keeper, and it would like shoot like marshmallows out, and it was the most inconvenient thing ever.
I'm still jealous though.
But I remember like having conversations with my parents because like we weren't sure how to feel about the fact that they were looking for God, you know, because at that time I was still religious. I would lose that within the next couple years, but like we were still like, wait a minute, are they implying that there's no such thing as God? Like I don't like that.
Sticky issues that you never expected a Star Trek movie to bring up in your personal life, but there it is. Now you got to talk about it.
Yeah. I do know that Gene Roddenberry later said that his 2 big regrets were he did wish that he could involve that there could be more of a gay or lesbian presence in the original series, and that he wished that he could have put more overtly anti-religious messages in Star Trek. So, I mean, those messages are there. They're just very, very, very in the background.
Yeah, you had to say things a very specific way in the 60s. You know, you didn't have the opportunity to explore those issues the way that they are explored now. I think it's really easy to forget that too, because we're far enough away from it now. It's like what, 55 years ago?
Yeah.
At this point, yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. I mean, they were doing that show in the '60s. Like, I mean, it's crazy. Like how big of a controversy having an interracial kiss was. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And then, it's funny how like they had to tiptoe around certain issues. And then they would have an episode where like someone's face was painted half black and half white, and the other character was painted half black and half white on the other side. And then they
Yeah.
just slammed your face into that throughout the course of the episode.
So one episode that I don't know if you've seen. Have you seen the animated series?
No, that I haven't. That's like my one blind spot for a classic Trek.
So for the most part, it kind of sucks.
Okay.
There's one episode where they portray the devil as a a alien species who comes to Earth and like causes like mischief like throughout like the history of Earth, it's an alien who has like horns and looks like the traditional idea of what uh, uh, the devil looks like. And I will say one of the things that's really cool about it is it's more. I mean, they know the line that they have to toe, but it's way more anti-religion than you would think like a Saturday morning cartoon would be.
Yeah, especially one that was produced on an extremely low budget, from what I understand.
Okay, so sorry for the gigantic Star Trek interlude. I'll get back to the comments now. Joe is saying cats will cat at the worst times. It's certainly true. And Carl is saying we're all cat people. I think you're right.
Oh, thank you, Carl.
He said that he signed up to notify on launch. So you've got at least 2 more guys because
Appreciate it.
3 more guys.
Thank you very much. Oh wow.
4 more guys. So, wow. So this was a good appearance.
The support means a lot.
So Donna's saying we understand when things are going wrong, like Mike Jimmy getting run over by a scooter and then having to have hip surgery. Oh, okay. So I didn't know that he had so many issues with his Kickstarter. Mike Jimmy's a guy who is sometimes. So he's from Australia, so he can't always watch live, but he's a good guy that we. So Marvin. So okay, so explain this to me. Marvin is quoting Star Trek 4.
Star Trek
And
5.
then he calls us nerds. So what's your favorite of the Star Trek movies, Benjamin?
Two and then 6. No question.
I know that my favorite line from a Star Trek movie is from Star Trek 6, which is, "You've never read Shakespeare till you've read it in the native Klingon."
The original Klingon. Yeah, that's a good one. I met Christopher Plummer. He did it was like a one-man show kind of thing. I was probably 14 and he came to my town, to the university in my town, did this like one-man show. And then afterwards there was a kind of a small gala. And I had, and I have no idea where this is today, and it's sad, but I had like the Star Trek 6 movie magazine, and inside there was like an 8x10 of him as General Chang. And I had asked him to sign it. And he was like, "This is one of the most fun roles I ever did."
Yeah.
And to hear like an actor of that renown say that about something I was obsessed with made me feel pretty good.
I can tell you my mom would love to shake your hand just to be a little bit closer to, because that's her number one celebrity crush.
Christopher Plummer. I get it. Yeah.
Which is more to do with The Sound of Music than
Von Trapp's.
Star Trek. Yeah.
Yeah.
Carl is mentioning, you are correct, Carl. I think I had a slip of the tongue and I said that Mike Jimmy was from Australia. And you're correct. He is from the Netherlands. The point is that he lives halfway across the world and he can't watch the show live. And Carl is forgiving us for the Star Trek tangent because he started it. So maybe, Benjamin, we could talk a little bit more about some of your more comic book related influences. You mentioned Terminator and you mentioned Star Trek. What are some of your comic book influences?
Well, I came to comics pretty late in life. I when I was a kid, I read a lot of Saturday morning. Here in Canada, it's Saturday morning, but I know in the U.S. it's more of a Sunday morning comics thing in the newspaper. So I read a lot of Doonesbury and Bill Watterson and Gary Larson and that kind of stuff. I really loved that, and I also read there in Quebec where I live. There is a lot of crossover with the bande dessinée scene, the BD scene from France. So I would read like Asterix and Obelix and Tintin, but mostly in English translations. And then when I became a teenager, I just drifted away from comics. I never transitioned to superhero stuff. It just didn't happen. And then in my early 30s, I moved into a neighborhood in Montreal that had a comic book store a couple of blocks from where I lived that had just opened as well. And it was called Crossover Comics. And I drifted in there and became friendly with the staff and discovered that indie comics were a thing. I didn't know that. I didn't know that there was stuff outside of like X-Men and Batman and whatnot. Like it is just this whole world of comics that had completely passed me by, because I grew up in a small town. And if you don't have a comic book shop in your small town, you're not going to find indie comics. It's just not going to happen. And I started reading books by people like Alison Bechdel and Simon Hanselman and that kind of stuff. And I got super into it. I was like, wow, these are pretty amazing stories. I'm not seeing these anywhere else, like in other types of media. Like I love movies. I watch a lot of television, but the stories I was encountering in comic books were well outside what I could access elsewhere. And that's really what drew me in. And then after 7 or 8 years of like voraciously reading everything I could, I decided it was time to make my own comics, and came out with Code 45 in 2020. And that was published by Scout Comics and Simon and Schuster. And then started a second book called Dead Air, which is currently on hiatus because my co-creator is having a bit of a medical issue. So that's on hold for a while. But as a result of that hiatus, I started thinking about Model UN as an idea. And it's the fastest I've ever gone from concept to script to finished book. I think I probably got serious about scripting last December, and the art was finished for the book in August. And that's pretty fast for 54 pages. And I'm surprised by it, but I'm also happy with the results. Like the idea wasn't to do it quickly. It just kind of happened. And as I had mentioned, this is my first black and white book. It's my first manga style book. So fingers crossed that all of the really great people who've supported my previous books, which were much more Western style, will cross over, or at least take a look and see if it piques their curiosity, because the heart and the storytelling are still me, even if the format looks a little bit different than what they might have been used to.
So when you mentioned the comic books that really got you into comic books, for those of us who don't, who maybe aren't as well versed, can you explain what it was that drew you in?
I think it was, like I was saying, the idea of stories that are way outside the mainstream. Like Alison Bechdel wrote this book called Fun Home. You might have, I'm sure you're familiar with it.
I know. I'm sorry. Yeah, I know who Alison Bechdel is now that you mentioned it. Yeah, she's great.
She had Dykes to Watch Out For, which is like a comic strip she wrote for a long time in the 90s. And to see a story about a woman reconciling like her father's death, which was probably a suicide, and probably because he was closeted, and she's figuring this all out over the course of her life. And like, that's her, that's her first graphic novel. And like, to encounter a story that powerful, I have no other way to see that. I have no other way to hear that kind of story. Like as I mentioned, I'm a voracious reader, and there's a period where I had been reading all my life fiction, tons and tons of fiction. And once I encountered independent comics, it's like a switch flipped and my interest just veered towards comics to get my fiction fix. And I think it's truly because there's far less gatekeeping in terms of what makes it into the publishing world. There's far more perspectives. There's, as sad as it is to say, there's less focus on what sells, because we already know what sells in comic books, and it's capes and tights and superpowers and stuff. And that's cool. But on the edges of that are things that aren't as commercial. And as a result of not being as commercial, there's less oversight and less gatekeeping about getting them onto the market. And people can really thrive on those outskirts with stories that you're not going to find elsewhere.
Yeah. So I think I've mentioned on the show before, I'm part of a writers group where there's only one other comic book guy. Most of the people there are novelists. And one of the things that I find really fascinating is that it does feel like there's a stigma with creator-owned stuff that there is not with comic books. To me, it feels like these writers will go to such great lengths to not have a self-published book. I mean, to me, the whole idea that you have to have a literary agent and a publisher, and your book has to be sitting in a bookstore somewhere is 10 years in the past.
I agree completely. And I feel like maybe the part of the reason why that's still a focus for novelists is because there's a clear pipeline to what might be termed success for people who are looking at that as a business model, where it's like everything that you just said, agent, distribution, publishing, it's all set up. In comics, it's a free-for-all. Like, there's no pathway to whatever success means. There's not even a pathway to doing like big 3 publisher books. It feels completely random and arbitrary. And if you're in that environment, there's no reason to not do it yourself. And I've been on both sides. I've had books put out by independent publishers, and Diamond distributed them, and Simon and Schuster distributed them, and they were in bookstores and stuff. And I don't think I'll ever do it again. I think that like doing it myself was far more rewarding. There's, even if you have that infrastructure that's putting your book out distribution wise, you still have to do exactly the same level of promotion to get people aware that your book exists. Most of these publishers either don't have the budget or don't have the manpower, or the person power to do that kind of thing. So if you're going to be doing all the work, it makes sense to control the process, to streamline your profits, to be able to generate enough income to do your next book, however you want to look at it. And I think it's really true what you pointed out, that stigma in the comic books world does not exist, because it, particularly I think for independent comics, being at the margins historically means that you're just happy to have that book in the world and getting it in front of as many people as you can. However you can do that, there's no one feels shame about that, and nor should they.
Well, and I think also some of the biggest comic books in history started from nothing.
Yeah.
Which you don't necessarily have that track record with prose.
No, I think you're right.
Obviously, I mean, like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is the craziest example of 2 stoners sitting in their living room, like passing back and forth a sheet of paper and taking turns drawing a character. Like, one guy came up with, the turtle face, and then the next guy came up with like the mask that they wear over their face, and then like the next guy came up with the weapons, and then the next guy came up with, and this is it's now $1 billion. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the movies, animated, the TV shows, everything has made well in excess of $1 billion.
Yeah.
And to me, that's a beautiful thing. The fact that these 2 knuckleheads sitting around their living room came up with that idea one night is so amazing to me. And it's so much what I love about comic books.
And if you, the way that the literary world is perceived or perceives itself is sometimes funny to me, because if you look back on books that are considered classics, like books, Charles Dickens, for example, a lot of what he was writing at the time was serialized in publications that were paying him by the chapter, right? And he was writing these stories as a commercial venture, and then they eventually get collected and they become classics. And they had humble origins. Dumas, who wrote The Count of Monte Cristo, the reason that book is so long is because he was trying to stretch out the gravy train as long as he could, because whoever was publishing his serialized versions they would pay him for each chapter. He's like, okay, I'm just going to keep writing chapters until you tell me to stop. And now that book is, again, a classic, but its origins, he didn't sit down and he didn't think like, oh man, I have to write this incredible work of literature. I have to have a literary agent. I have to present this to a publisher. No, he was just like, I have a story that I'm going to tell. This is a great way for me to get it out. And I'm just going to do it until they tell me to stop. And that kind of ethos, I think, gets lost when you're looking at like modern literary culture, whatever literary culture means, which is also like a weird thing to say, I think, because what we're doing in comics is also literary culture. There's no real barrier. It's just because there happen to be images, people throw up a barrier.
Yeah, it's funny how we put kind of these arbitrary lines between like, oh, this is art house comics and this is like mainstream comics and all that. Like,
yeah.
And something I should point out, Carl is saying that I agree on the lack of gatekeeping and lesser focus on popularity in indie publishing. That's why we publish our own fiction novels. And yeah, and Carl and Donna put out indie books, and they're really cool. But I do think that a lot of novel writers do have it in their head like, oh, I can't do this on my own. I have to get a publisher. So I should give you, Carl, kudos for not going that route and doing the independent publishing thing.
We get indoctrinated, like I'm a pro writer. For the last 17 years, I've supported myself writing freelance. And when I was a kid, I loved to write and I wrote a lot, but it was very rarely, I was encouraged to write, but it was very rarely presented to me as something that I could make a living at. And that was completely false. It's been an incredible career for me. But these types of jobs, these types of professions, we're not steered towards them. And I think that part of that is because of this gatekeeping structure that exists. It's the same for novelists. It's like, well, you could try to write your novel, but like, good luck getting anyone to pay attention to it, or good luck having a publisher promote your book, or being anything other than a mid-list writer. And it's like this weird self-defeating infrastructure that has sprung up around certain aspects of writing and creating. And comics has been lucky to overthrow that in a lot of ways. And I think crowdfunding has played a huge part in that, because crowdfunding exists for novels too, but I don't think it's caught on at the same level as it has for comic books. And maybe that's because comics have a higher production cost. So more comic artists, more comic creators are going to crowdfunding because they have to get things off the ground. For a novelist, your production costs are lower because you're not paying for art. You're not necessarily paying for layout, printing. You might be paying for printing, but maybe you're doing print on demand. It's just a different kind of thing. So I think that the higher cost of comics might be pushing more people towards crowdfunding. I hope that literary novels catch up, because crowdfunding is for everyone. It's not just for comic books.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that over the next few years, I do still think Kickstarter and stuff like that is still viewed as like a lesser than having a publisher. And I'm hoping that within the next few years that kind of ends. And the other thing that I've been pushing for a while is Kickstarter as a means of distribution for retailers. Like, I always put a distributor tier on my Kickstarters, and to be honest with you, I really don't get very many. I don't get much traction on that tier, but I'm still hopeful that that's going to change. I don't know if you do that or if you've had any luck with it.
I've had retailers approach me in the past about getting a discount on if they ordered 10, 15, 20 copies. I haven't done a specific retailer tier. But yeah, it's definitely a good idea. Retailer outreach is difficult. Like I can remember for when the trade came out for Code 45, I wrote like 160 postcards with art from my book to local comic book stores across North America, being like, "Hey, here's our book. Here's where you can order it from. Would love to hear more from you. Would be happy to send you more stuff." You know, some of it goes into the void, some of it doesn't. Sometimes you hear back. It's like engaging with the direct market is it can be difficult as an independent, but you have to wonder, like, is the direct market necessary as an independent? No. I think it could probably be a good complementary stream of income. But I really think the strength of being an independent comic book creator is the direct connection you get with your readers by selling to them directly and by maintaining that relationship. And if you go exclusively through the direct market, you're pushing that relationship onto the retailers. The retailers then become your interface with your readers. And there are some really great comic book stores out there with really great people who will do an amazing job of like getting people excited about your book. And I've met a lot of them, and that's fantastic. But if you can do that yourself directly, I think that that's even better. So I feel like the direct market should be something that's a part of your strategy, but maybe not your primary strategy as an independent.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, first of all, financially, it just isn't there. I mean, I'm not going to put the effort into promoting retail sales when I'm making 5 cents per book through comic books that are being sold in comic book shops, when I can make like $4 or $5 per book on Kickstarter. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, we for Code 45, we earned 7 times on Kickstarter what we earned through the direct market through Scout Comics. I mean, that's absurd.
So Carl is saying that his next novel is going to be on Kickstarter.
That's great.
I look forward to seeing that, Carl. In fact, if you want to be on the show, make sure you let me know when it's about to be on Kickstarter. I would definitely love to have you on as a guest on. And Dan is saying, I'd love to be a mid-list novelist, but my fan base isn't that.
I feel like mid-list is like disappearing. I feel like there's just like the people at the top that they actually promote, and then the people at the bottom that they're just rolling the dice on. And then like, this is how close those people are now in publishing, from what I understand. But it's rough. Like mid-list is hard because you're doing it all yourself, you know?
Exactly. Okay. So Benjamin, I do try to keep these shows under an hour.
Of course.
Carl's saying thank you. Did you want to promote, like, did you want to put, other than your Kickstarter, did you want to mention like social media links?
Not really. So if for the Kickstarter, modeluncomic.com is the easiest way to get there. For social media, I'm trying to stay off it because it's a pretty negative place these days, but you do find me on Instagram where people are generally not mean to me. I'm at Hunting Benjamin on Instagram, and you can find all of my writing about comics, about cars, about whatever at benjaminhunting.com. So those are the 3: modeluncomic.com, benjaminhunting.com, and at Hunting Benjamin. 3 ways to get a hold of me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
On the Kickstarter. Thank you everybody who watched and commented.
Thank you for everyone who clicked to be notified too. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, we had a pretty good comment section tonight. I think a lot of people saying interesting stuff, adding to the conversation. So again, thank you everybody, and thank you again, Benjamin. Have a great rest of your night, and I'll see you guys here same time, same bat time, same bat station next week.